welcome to the premiere episode of Gar Boras' Time Machine. And anybody wondering what this is, last year I launched something called On the Record, and my good buddy Gar Boras, who's the lead singer from Appetite for Destruction, he did about 9 of these interviews. We got 2 more of these to still kind of roll out. But one thing became obviously clear to me is Gar is not just a musician in his own right, but he's a music historian. I mean, I think the guy could give classes in, rock and roll history, but we'll talk about that another day to day. And so from that, me and Gar got talking, and we're launching Gar Boras' Time Machine, and this is where we're going to once a month have a conversation, like you'll be hearing today, on something to do with pop culture. It could be music related, it could be movie related. We may get into classic TV shows that we grew up on, but today, specifically, when I was talking about doing this first episode with Gar, he said, I'm really into horror films. I would like to do something based on that. And then after I hung up the phone, I was looking online, and I happened to come across this ad that was saying, the movie Dracula is turning 90 this year, and and we're talking about the Dracula movie from 1931, starring Bela Lugosi. And so Gar and I are going to be talking all about that today. So Gar, why don't we start this episode with you telling us, since you're such a fan of these horror movies, how you first got into horror movies.
When I was a kid, I used to love watching old black and white movies.
Yeah.
And of course, it was my sister and I, and we both kind of shared this interest in the horror movies. And I just remember the first time. I mean, we're talking about a long time ago.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I'm thinking like elementary school age.
Yeah.
And the first time I watched Dracula and watching Bela Lugosi's portrayal, it was so creepy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as a kid, you're watching this. As a young kid, you're watching this, and I just, there's this one scene that stuck in my head when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Where he's telling one of the female characters that he's mesmerized, or maybe he's already bitten her, and he's got semi control over her, because he has to bite her a number of times to get full control over her. And so he's kind of got semi control over her, and he's standing there with his arm out, and his fingers are like crooked, and he's saying to her, "Come here," commanding her to come here, and she's kind of trying to resist, and he's pulling her with his will, or whatever you call it. That was so creepy as a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm just watching this, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I love this.
Yeah, and before we get any further into this, I should also make note, an interesting thing about Bela Lugosi is he was Hungarian, okay, and so he had like a deep accent apparently, but it kind of fit the part. And so he became kind of typecast after this movie, where because he did a lot of these horror movies, and so, but because of his thick accent, he was limited as far as different kind of roles he could get later on in his career, and he kind of became typecast after this. But going back to what you're saying, especially when you see this film for first time as a young kid, it really does have an effect on you. I mean, because first of all, as a kid, you might not just realize, you might not be able to realize at that point at such a young age that these are not real monsters. These are not people just kind of in makeup. And going back to this film, which people got to realize the time frame we're talking about, which was February 1931 is when it was released. And so the interesting thing is, as a kid, as you're watching this, I mean, even though if you look back now, that the special effects were nothing what they are like today in Hollywood, but the monster looks so real. He looks so much like a vampire that I could see as a kid you'd be terrified. And tell me, how much of it being black and white did that have to do with kind of really spooking you out?
Well, it really facilitates the gothic aspect of the movie. If the movie was done in color, now there are other movies that are done in color that also really, really well facilitates the gothic aspect of it. But to me, as a kid, the black and white really, really facilitated it. Even the snap, crackle, pop in old movies where, it's the flaws in the sound.
Oh, yeah.
Even that facilitates the creepiness of it and everything. It's just, there's certain aspects of it, even, because when I watched it as a kid back in the 1960s, the movie was already old.
I mean,
it was made in the 1930s.
Oh yeah, let me add to that point is Well, we're celebrating the 90th anniversary of this particular movie starring Bela Lugosi. Let me tell you. Here's the interesting thing. The movie here we're talking about is celebrating 90 years, but it is based on Bram Stoker's novel, which was like a gothic novel. This about this vampire from Transylvania, and about his move to England. But anyways, the book was published, and you think 1931 is going back a ways, okay? The book itself, but all this Dracula stuff is based on. The book by Bram Stoker was published May 26, 1897. Now, the movie's turning 90 years old, but the book it's based on is actually 123 years old. So if you go back that far, Dracula's a lot older than 90 years old, Well,
yeah. And what does it tell you about the popularity of gothic horror?
Oh yeah, I mean,
it goes back a long time ago, because when you're talking about the late 1800s, it's a completely different societal time.
Oh yeah.
And you're talking about things have become so advanced now.
Yeah.
But even back in those days, which was much more of a heavily religious time period, where most people that were in mainstream society were religious Christians.
Yeah.
But yet here is something that is very dark, very gothic, very tied into so many people have tied Dracula into satanic.
Oh yeah.
But yet it just kind of shows you, even though it was a time period like this, there was still a very, very large appetite by the public for that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, and here's the interesting thing. Going all the way back to this being based on a book from 1897, is the fact, and you read this book, I mean, I imagine, 123 years ago, they didn't have film, they didn't have TV, so when you're reading the book, if you were around back then, 123 years ago, I mean, this is just Dracula is a figment of everybody's imagination at that time. So come 1931, when they put on the first, this is kind of what Dracula is. I mean, the imagination that took to kind of take the character from the book onto the big screen, Yeah,
but then there also were other people from a long time ago. I don't know how far. I think it's very close to the same time period. Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh yeah, I was reading that, and something came up about Edgar Allan Poe, kind of in cross reference. I forget what it was now, but you're absolutely right, and kind of again, here's the interesting thing about this particular film, Dracula from 1931, is while it's based kind of loosely on the book from 1897, it was the film was more based on the stage adaptation. It had like a Broadway show that Bela Lugosi was in like in 1924 before the film was even made, and somebody seen him in that thought, maybe he could do it, but then they kind of had second thoughts because he had such a deep Hungarian accent, but somebody said, well, let's let him do it. He kind of has played the part before, and so they got a guy that was kind of experienced. But so you take it from a book, and then it becomes a play, and then this is the first portray of Dracula into the movies.
Yeah, it's just it's really kind of mind-boggling, the longevity.
Yeah.
Of that, and I'm sure there were, creepy story writers even before.
Oh yeah.
All of these people, but it just doesn't seem that a lot of those works have survived over all of this time.
Oh yeah.
But Bram Stoker and Edgar Allan Poe, both of their works have really survived a really, really long amount of time.
Yeah. And then, having nothing to do with the film, but another interesting thing I read about Bela Lugosi was when he died, he was trying to see, I guess, before he actually died, when he did go, if his family would be able to kind of get the rights, the rights to the movies, or, the royalties for whatever would go to him. And I guess back then the law was what it was, which was because the film and all this stuff is copyrighted material, you could not transfer whatever he was getting at the time to his heirs. So that's kind of another interesting note here.
Yeah, that's kind of sucks because that's changed now. And you have the copyrights being able to be willed to your family members and stuff like that. But the law is
ever changing, as they say. Yeah.
yeah. But it's just like that. There was a lot of movies from that time period that really it just became really popular for my sister and I during that time period, and pretty much the majority of them were black and white. Black and white movies, but there are a lot. What I did is I jotted down my top 20 scary movies.
Okay.
That kind of what I did with the records. That I put down on Facebook, highly influential on me. They weren't just like my favorite to listen to. They were very influential on me.
Oh yeah.
And of course, because when I was growing up, these movies and pop culture was heavily influential on me too. So I did kind of the same thing with scary movies.
Okay.
I didn't really put it in order of favorite.
I hear you. Just whatever kind of came to mind. Yeah.
I really have to say that I'd have to put at the top of the list was, because it has such a sentimental, and it really goes back to where the whole thing was born.
Oh yeah.
As far as me really, falling in love with scary movies, Dracula from 1931 with Bela Lugosi.
Wow.
It absolutely has to be, number one at the list.
Okay.
But, right up there was the 1992 version of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Okay.
Done by Francis Ford Coppola and starring Gary Oldman.
Okay.
I have to tell you that I've said this so many times to people that that I'm close with. I feel that Gary Oldman is one of the most versatile actors out there, period. Because when you look at his work, every movie has a different character that he portrays.
Yeah.
And it's never ever every character is completely different, but yet you fully buy every character that he does. He does just an absolutely amazing job. But the job that he did with Dracula in that movie, the movie came out back in 1992.
Yeah.
And the movie was pretty, most of the Dracula movies out there, they take liberties with the story.
Yeah.
But the 1992 version really kind of stays very, very close to the story, because one of the aspects in the book that a lot of the movies don't hold to is he gets younger.
Oh, okay.
As the movie gets he starts out older and he gets younger, kind of like what was that Brad Pitt movie?
Oh, Interview with a Vampire. Yeah.
No, it wasn't the Brad Pitt with the vampires. Interview of a Vampire is some Benjamin or whatever.
Oh, Breaking Benjamin.
He starts as an old man and he gets younger.
Benjamin Button or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, in the book, that's how Dracula goes.
Oh, interesting.
He starts out older, and as the movie goes along, he gets younger and younger and younger. And that's, one of those kind of aspects of the book that most movies don't really, stay true to. But I cannot say enough about how creepy and how well done that 1992 version of Dracula.
And see,
it's really done well, and it's creepy.
I mean, here's the thing with that. Okay, first of all, we're talking about Dracula, something that is based on a book from 123 years ago. So, when the book first came out, a lot of people, it's something we're just reading about. It's kind of a figment of their imagination. And then 1931 rolls around, we get our first kind of, this is what Dracula is, this is what Dracula is supposed to look like. And from that point on, everybody is kind of comparing it to that. Now, I imagine as a kid seeing Bela Lugosi as Dracula, that kind of freaked you out, like you said. But by 1992, if they had made a film that looked exactly like the original, you said, "Oh, come on, man! That's a copycat." Then also too, you with what you can do in Hollywood by 1992, the fact that you can colorize it, you can do all these modern things you couldn't do back in 1931. You're going to kind of play with those extra special effects that you did not have back in the day. And I imagine first thing people are going to notice is it's different is the colorization. But again, that kind of adds a different kind of... see, a lot of people, especially let's say going back to 1992 even, you don't want to make a movie that looks like it came out in 1931. You want to kind of have a modern version of Dracula, so to speak,
Well, yeah, and Francis Ford Coppola, man.
Yeah.
Just what a great movie maker. I mean, look at The Godfather, how well he really, really, when he was portraying the young years of the Corleone family and everything, he really captured the time periods.
Oh yeah, he's great at that. Yeah,
that's what he did with the Dracula. He was, even though it was 1992, he was really capturing the time period.
Yeah, and then you don't think about things that are so simple, but even like going back to 1931, I was reading last night that one of the things that was really kind of they said kind of scary to people in that film was there were large periods of kind of just silence throughout the film, and that was kind of the when you were seeing it, I guess, in the theater back in the day, trying to kind of creep people out, and kind of just everything was silent. Oh, what's going to happen next? And in fact, I was reading when the film premiered in New York that after people seen it, I guess after the first 48 hours, they sold like 50,000 tickets. But what really kind of was great advertising them was some reviewer kind of wrote up this little article saying that people were so scared that they were falling out of their seats. Just based on like that description, people started to really come in droves to see the film even more, just because there's that anticipation of, okay, could a film really scare people that much? But I mean, you read something like that in the paper, just a review like that, you're going to want to go check it out,
When you look at it now, it's completely out of context because there's been so much done and there since then and everything. But at that time, in the early 1930s, people just weren't making creepy stuff like that, and you know what I mean. So it was very shocking to the American public. When things are introduced for the first time, it has so much more shock. Just like, say, the movie Jaws.
Yeah.
When that movie came out, that movie shocked people so much that people would not go to the beach.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I remember that.
It created a huge scare for people that really put a major impact on society.
Oh, I remember that, and you look at Jaws being what it is now, and all these years later, and you kind of think, oh, people were really, scared to go to the beach, but yeah, I do remember they had to actually tell people, okay, look, it was a mechanical shark, okay, because it did look so real. And if you've ever been to Universal Studios, you go on the tram ride, and that's one of the big things is, I know, even I've seen it a million times, and every time I tell you, it's still kind of, you're even when you're expecting, kind of like, Jaws comes up in a taxi. But yeah, they were having to tell people, look, it's a mechanical thing. It's not a real shark,
Can I tell you, it's a little bit off the storyline or what
Go ahead.
Today, but
yeah.
I think Jaws came out in about like mid-70s.
Yeah.
And I was hanging around with my friends, and we went to see Jaws. But when we went to the theater, the line was gigantic.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we all we're saying, no, I'm not going to stand in that line. I'm not going to. Yeah. But then there was one of our friends in the group that said, let's just wait and hang around the door, because they had places where you could sit down.
Oh yeah, I used to see people doing that all the time, man. I'm with you.
And if there's seats available, they'll come out and they'll tell us if there's still some seats, and we'll just go ahead and buy the seats and go in.
Yeah.
So sure enough, the guy comes out and he says, seats still available. So we bought tickets and we went in. Wow. Guess where those seats were?
The front.
The very front row.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm sitting in the very front row, and there's this gigantic theater screen.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen Jaws, the opening scene is horrific.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man.
Oh, my gosh. I will never forget that. I'm sitting there in the front row, and I'm watching that first scene, and I'm going, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
But that's my Jaws story.
Wow, okay. I love that.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That beginning scene has so much more impact when you're sitting that close, and it's that big in front of you.
I'm with you, Gar. And, anytime you have a story like that, feel free to share it, because I'll tell you, in all these COVID lockdowns, that's one thing I really miss, and I'm kind of sad to see that I kind of have this fear of it. Going to the movie theater is never going to return. I don't know that, that remains to be seen, but I mean, I miss, those are the days of going to see like blockbuster movies like that in the summer, waiting all summer for these movies to come out. And I mean, it was just a special time, especially these films we're talking about, special time in our lives, these movies like that kind of still to this day have a special place in our hearts, and Dracula too. It was kind of interesting because before we got all into that, you were kind of saying how for a film like this to be made in 1931, it wasn't. It was really a big deal. I mean, I was reading I'll read what I wrote down here. Dracula was a major gamble for a Hollywood studio to take at the time because in spite of it being based on a book, like a lot of movies are, that was, kind of known, they just did not know if audiences, especially in America, were ready to see a serious, full-fledged horror flick, But it would go on to be such a huge success that, this was released in February, and I think the same year, I think it was in November, which I'd like for us to do an episode on in the future. They followed Dracula up, I think in November, with the Frankenstein movie.
Oh gosh! I mean, you've got Dracula, you got Frankenstein, you got the Mummy, you got the Wolfman. You know what I mean? You got, and they're all iconic
figures.
Really, really capturing. There's all the element of gypsies in these movies,
and the element of surprise,
And you've got Bela Lugosi, you've got Boris Karloff, you've got Lon Chaney. And nowadays all of those guys are like the icons.
Oh yeah, I mean they're all gone, but so like Frankenstein is 90 years old as well. But here's the interesting thing. Okay, when you and me were talking about what we were going to do for today's show, I did see something about Dracula turning 90. I kind of posted that up there today, and you liked it. But anyways, the point being is I realized, wow, this is a pretty iconic thing. Dracula turning 90. But you tell me, like for example, we're talking about the 1992 version of the film, and they're very, very different, but somehow it is kind of the evolution of these characters, evolution of Dracula. But I bring this up because I don't know what it is, because even the 1992 film you brought up, it's a great film, but we still go back to kind of the original. I mean, it's kind of hokey and campy as like the original 1931 film may kind of look now. I don't know if it's because it's in black and white, but it is still so spooky when you watch it. And I don't know why, like these Universal monster movies we've been talking about, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, and stuff like that. I mean, those are the iconic kind of horror films. And like even recently, I mean, Universal, I didn't get a chance to see it, but Universal came out with like a modern version of The Invisible Man. And people went to...
how can I forget The Invisible Man? That was so creepy. Watching him take the whatever that kind of like gauze bandage off. When he had the gauze bandage on, you could see that there's actually a person, but when he took the gauze, it's like he's completely invisible. And for to be a kid watching that, oh my gosh, that was so creepy. Absolutely. Invisible Man was another one that's a mainstay for anyone
into horror.
Sometimes what people like to do is get together as friends, hang out together, and pop the popcorn, turn out the lights.
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
And watch old horror movies. All of those movies, you could sit there and fill a whole night and have more than enough.
I dare say a whole weekend, maybe. Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And as I was getting ready to say about with the they had this modern version of Invisible Man just came out like 2 or 3 years ago, and the funny thing is, okay, it's a modern-looking film, it's colorized and everything, but a lot of people were saying, you know what, it just doesn't beat the original, black and white one, and that's kind of interesting. I think because it's not that it was an awful film, but if you go back to those original monster movies like we're talking about today, there was just something so surreal, and maybe it has something to do with that. Was even though like you and I we were born way after 1931. That was probably for you and me like our first kind of our first look at Dracula, really, or that might have been our first image of Dracula. So anything that came after is kind of going to compare, no matter how good it is technically, very little in comparison.
Well, forever. Bela Lugosi will always be remembered as the Dracula, could never be be I think Gary Oldman did a phenomenal job. And, if there's any, technically, acting-wise and everything, you would want to give it to Gary Oldman.
Oh, yeah,
because he did such an incredible job. But there's a person that was born to do it, which is Bela Lugosi, and then there's a extremely talented actor, that does the best he can absolutely do to portray the character. But still, you have to give it to the person that was absolutely born to do it.
Yeah, and
that's Bela Lugosi.
And again, I think too, like you point out, Gary Oldman, he's a very versatile actor, which is kind of interesting because, he can do a lot more than just Dracula, whereas this guy Bela Lugosi, he kind of that's kind of what he became known for. And then years later into his career, he became kind of typecast at, the only really good roles he could get. It had a lot to do with from what I was reading, his Hungarian accent was so deep. These were the only type of roles he could really do. And then eventually, later on in his career, he would still get roles, but he tried to do comedy roles in other types of movies, but those films, for whatever reason, they were not as successful. And then eventually Universal would have him do some other kind of horror flicks, or they'd put him in other movies, just kind of keep his career going. I guess they had a contract with him, and the thing was, at that point in time, even though he was typecast, he was still kind of a big name in Hollywood, and so if they had a low budget movie that they kind of wanted to try to get out there or something, they would put him in the film just to kind of attach his name to the film, so people would come.
Yes. Basically the B movie market.
Yeah.
That happened to a lot of actors and actresses during that time period. There was, especially when TV came into the picture, when it was all in its beginning, that happened to Superman.
Oh, yeah.
The guy that played Superman back in the black and white TV show days.
George Reeves,
George Reeves. When I was a kid, I was watching those movies, and faster than a speeding bullet.
Oh, yeah. I remember watching that, and I could kind of repeat it word for word at the time. I'd tune in every week, and I'd be like, yeah, faster than a speeding bullet, able to leap tall building. Think about, look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's playing a Superman. And I also used to love watching it because it used to crack me up. In Superman, it was kind of, especially the old TV show you're talking about, it was a combination of science fiction, and this other kind of, science fiction and just everyday life. But it used to be funny because you would see, when he's not Superman, he puts on his glasses, he's Clark Kent, and he kind of...
It was the first of the superheroes.
Yeah, and he kind of was winking at you like, hey...
Which has become a huge market now. Marvel and
DC.
all of that stuff. But that was the first of the superheroes.
Oh, yeah, and I used to love, he put on his glasses, he'd be winking, I was like, I'm Superman. Oh, okay. But they put in that little bit of comedy. I dug that, And,
but he got typecast and he could not get any other roles. And I don't know if it's true, but my parents told me that he committed suicide because he could not get any other roles. He was typecast as Superman, and
that is true.
Could not break free from it.
That is true, and I heard that at one point he tried to leave the show, but he ended up coming back because he couldn't get anything else. He became typecast, sadly. And, talk a little more about Dracula's influence on pop culture. I mean, Dracula is, even in the modern day, has so much influence on pop culture. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of the films, but they have this animated film, I think there's 3 of them now, Hotel Transylvanian. One of the main characters is based on Count Dracula. It's kind of...
it's kind of cute.
Kind of cute, but it's a real fitting kind of tribute, I think, and it's kind of a modern day thing, and it shows, maybe from a kid's perspective, it's an animated version, and I get a kick out of the fact that it doesn't take Dracula too serious. It's kind of made in from a comedic point of view, but it seems to work. you know.
And yeah, I've seen it. I think I've seen it once, and I liked it.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, I like a lot of those films like that. And then another thing, obviously, like I'm sure you remember also black and white because of the time period, but the Monsters TV show, which was based on all of these characters, like Herman Munster is based on kind of Frankenstein, and Grandpa's based on Dracula, and it's kind of just kind of a comedic spoof on all these monsters. And kind of like, just imagine if you had a family of creatures like that, you know, what it would be like. And
well, as a kid, I was growing up, and I was watching TV during that time period.
Yeah.
And at the same time that the Munsters was going on, the Addams Family was going on.
Yeah.
And but my sister and I, we really gravitated towards the Addams Family.
Oh, interesting.
You know, it's just that the characters were so. I don't know. We just gravitated towards that show much more than we gravitated towards the Munsters.
I'll tell you why, maybe, because if you're
both TV shows were very popular, but I there was just something about the guy that played Gomez. There was something about Cousin It. There was Thing. Cleopatra, the meat-eating plant.
Yeah. I mean, I think
playing the harpsichord.
I think maybe like the Addams Family and the Munsters, they came out at the same time. But the Addams Family, I would say, maybe you're kind of a little more freaky, a little more out there. Like if you're really
it was darker.
If you're really into
much
horror,
more gothic.
Yeah. Whereas the Munsters, I think maybe one reason I gravitated towards that more, although I like both of Addams and the Munsters, but I think I gravitate more towards the Munsters because it was more based on a kind of a comedic kind of view.
Yes, you could put it in more the kind of category of Bewitched.
Yeah. I mean
that style of comedy TV show.
Yeah, I mean, like I think another reason I gravitate towards the Munsters, like I was always like a big Frankenstein fan, and so Herman Munster, and you got this kind of what looks like this, huge scary monster. Then he's just like so kid-like, and he's always jumping up and down. No! I want to.
Well, can I tell you something about the person that played Herman Munster?
Fred Gwynn, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, he went on to play a really, really creepy character in Pet Sematary.
Oh, okay. Yeah, wow.
That's Herman Munster in Pet Sematary, the first version.
I have to go back and look at that.
I think it was done back in the 80s.
Okay, yeah.
And his famous line in Pet Sematary, "Sometimes dead is better."
Wow. And it's interesting, if you know anything about Fred Gwynn, is he was also in this other TV series, Highway Patrol or something, I think, or Car, I forget what it was, but anyways, from doing the Munsters all those years and having to put on all that makeup, he suffered from awful back pain, I guess. But but again, he's another one of these guys that became typecasted, and but he did it. He was great at what he did. And then talking also about Dracula's kind of influence on pop culture. You could see, like, even in the music you and I listen to, like Rob Zombie, White Zombie, like he even did that song Dracula.
Bela Lugosi was in a movie called White Zombie.
Yeah. And so, all that stuff, it affects music and other movies and other horror genres. But Dracula is kind of where all these horror films really kind of spun off of. And like I said, it's based on a novel that's 123 years old. But it's kind of interesting. We didn't get our real first look at Dracula into the movies until 1931.
Now that we're talking about all of this, I don't read books that often, now it's just really sparked an interest. I want to read the original Bram Stoker's Dracula, the book.
Yeah, just to see how different it is.
I've never read the book, and I was more of a kid of pop culture.
Oh, you and me both.
More of a watching the movies and all of that kind of stuff. But I think I'd probably be able to appreciate reading that book more now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm a much more of a visual guy like you, meaning I'm not much into book reading. One type of books I do like to read about, all these like famous musical biographies that are coming out now. The latest one I read is Brian Wheat from Tesla. He put out a book, and interesting thing about that is, I guess if it's something you're into like music, the book he put out, Brian Wheat from Tesla, it makes for a great read because if you're into what you're reading, like I read a chapter every night, and by end of 2 weeks, I had the whole book read. But it's interesting just talking about all this stuff, and you're realizing, first of all, like when I contacted you the other day about doing this, I thought, wow, 90 years of Dracula. This was my initial thought, process, and I thought that's pretty amazing. And then, it's not quite 100 years old, but you're almost there. And then you read, well, actually, it was based on a book that's 123 years old, so it's really a lot older than that. And like when I talk about taking it from the book to the big screen to what it's become today, and it's kind of interesting because, again, you and I we weren't born until long after 1931. But so like even when we seen this as kids, it was an old movie at the time, but it still had such an impact on us all these years later.
Yeah, and now that you're kind of like talking about books and stuff like that. When I did, have enough time to read books and stuff, the creepiest book I ever read was by Stephen King.
Oh yeah, wow, yeah.
Okay, God, what is the name of the book? Because I'm telling you, it's a really, really, I remember I was back in the 80s and I was at a rehearsal, and there was a guy that was talking about, Stephen King books, and I guess he had a book with him when he just came to hang around and watch us rehearse.
Yeah.
And he had a book with him, and it was by Stephen King, and I was asking him questions because, of course, I love, scary movies and creepy stuff, and then I knew that Stephen King, was, wrote, scary stories and stuff, and I know the name of it now. The guy was just going off about this book. Telling me you have to read this book.
Okay.
You have to read this book.
Yeah.
And I go, what's the name of the book? And it's called The Stand.
Oh, okay.
And because that guy was just going off the deep end about, how you have to, and so when I went and I bought the book and I looked at it and go, holy crap.
Yeah.
Because that book is like a million pages long. It's really, a long story. And, and I had never read a book that, that thick.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to tell you, I read the book one time. It was many years, ago, way back in the 80s.
But it's still with you,
just off with that guy.
Yeah.
That book is, to me, I will go to my grave saying this. That book is the greatest fictional story ever written.
Wow. Yeah, I wonder if they've ever made a movie based on it. That'd be interesting.
They've tried, but the movies, they've done like mini series and stuff like that, but it never has, captured what the book it was, does. Because Stephen King, everything has so much detail, and that's the reason why his books, are kind of thick.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I read that book. I was never bored. I was never going, oh God, what is this going to end?
Oh yeah.
No. There are parts of that book that are so creepy.
Yeah.
And that book really ties into, what's going on right now.
Yeah.
With COVID and stuff like that. But even though it goes so much farther than everything, But I will tell, I know it's off the track of Dracula and everything
go
like
ahead,
that, but The Stand by Stephen King is the greatest fictional story ever written.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Hey, let me tell you one thing, Gar. Never shy away from sharing any of your ideas or stories here, because even if it gets kind of off topic, because that's a great springing board for like future episodes. I'll just leave it at that. But
well, I'm telling you, man, that book. If you like, see, okay, I love what I describe as creepy. I really do not like blood, guts, and gore.
No, I'm with you.
Movies.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Because blood, guts, and gores relies on blood, guts, and gore as the whole thing. The attraction, but. I gravitate towards really creepy stuff that's creepy. Not, maybe it has some scary parts, but it really, if it's creepy, I love it. If it's a movie and it's creepy, I'm totally down for turning out the lights and busting out the popcorn and watching movies. And back in the 80s, that was a really popular thing to do, because video stores was in its very beginning. It wasn't Blockbuster. Most of the video stores were mom and pop places that you would go in with the family, and it was really, really popular to go in there, back in those days.
I'm with you,
and look through all the videos, and then, as your family, you would pick whatever movie or whatever 2 movies that you're going to get, and then you took it home, and that's what you did. You turned down the lights, and you put in the movie, and you bust out the popcorn, and that was a very, very popular thing to do back in the 80s.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm there. I miss those days, as they say. But kind of also talking about Dracula and horror, just horror movies in general. I'm with you as far as, okay, if there's a reason to have the blood and guts, because maybe we're talking about a serial killer, okay, I'm all for that. But if it's just being done for the sport of doing it, just kind of for the shock value.
Absolutely. It's got to have a story that pulls you in. You know what I mean? Something that, perks that interest. What?
You
What's
mentioned,
going on?
You mentioned Stephen.
Why is that happening?
You mentioned,
what's going on?
Yeah, you mentioned Stephen. Yeah, you mentioned Stephen King. A good example of that is, one of the things that he's recently done on film is the story of It, which is based on this kind of like John Wayne Gacy guy that dresses up.
That movie, even though the book blows away the movie, It is on my top 20 list.
Yeah, and you know why
before this is over, I'd really like to, because there's going to be some old ones. So if there's anybody that listens to this that enjoys going out and getting movies, and then maybe get a couple of movies and do the popcorn thing, and you want to do the retro, you like retro stuff. I'd like to go over that list, because there's some really, really good ones, and there's some that are lost in the shuffle today that are really, really good.
So why don't we wrap it up with that for today, Gar? But is this your top 5, or let you?
Okay, I already told you. Dracula and Bram Stoker. Okay, the 1980 version with Kurt Russell, The Thing.
Oh, okay.
That's a great one. Another one, I will never forget the time when I was in the theater back in the 70s and I watched The Omen.
Wow.
And Jack Palance's daughter played the part of this girl that's standing on a windowsill going, "It's all for you."
Wow.
"It's all for you, Jason."
Yeah.
And I don't want to ruin the movie.
I hear you.
But that is a shocking scene right there. And The Open really got me. one from, I believe it was from the 1950s called House of Wax.
Oh, okay.
That's a retro one. Vincent Price. That's one of, I think, Vincent Price's best movies. There's two of them that are Vincent Price that are on my list.
Okay.
Another one from the 90s. Because I haven't seen anything, in quite a while that really creeps me out.
I hear you. Yeah.
But The Ring.
Oh, okay.
If you've ever seen The Ring, that one is creepy.
I know there's been a couple versions of that. Which one are you talking about specifically?
Just The Ring, the one from the 90s,
the
very first one.
Okay.
That is done so well and is so creepy.
Wow.
Of course, we talked about Jaws, and we talked about It.
Yeah.
That even the movie, Pennywise is, give you nightmares.
Oh yeah, I think the thing with that is to read it in a book is one thing, but to see it kind of come to life on this big screen is totally a different thing. Like the nightmare comes to life.
and what's his name from Rocky Horror Picture Show? Did a phenomenal job.
Wow.
Portraying Pennywise. Just made the guy so creepy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I like this movie, this next one, even better than Silence of the Lambs, even though it's part of the Silence.
Yeah.
It's the second one called Hannibal.
Oh, yes.
Their take on, Hannibal, their take on that movie, utilizing him as a person that really enjoys the finer things in life.
Yeah.
But mixing that up with the fact that he's a cannibal.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
wow.
My gosh.
Yeah.
That is one. The scene in that movie with Ray Liotta.
Oh, yeah.
Towards the end, I don't want to give it away.
Uh-huh.
But the first time I saw that scene, it's not a blood, guts, and gore scene. It is just absolutely creepy with capital letters.
Wow.
But I had to look away.
Yeah.
I literally had to look away. It was that creepy, the thought of that actually happening.
Wow.
It is that creepy and that shocking.
Wow.
So I can't say enough about Hannibal. That scene right there just really got me.
Wow.
Another one from the mid-'70s called Alien.
Oh, yes, the original one.
The scene where they're sitting down and eating. I'm not going to give any more away, but that scene is absolutely shocking. The girl sitting next to me at the theater screamed in my ear so loudly that my ear was ringing.
Oh, wow.
When we left the theater. That's how scary that scene was. And to see that in a theater on the big screen, when you don't know what's going to happen and they just pull that scene out on you, my God. There's so much to that movie that was scary, even though it's, from the mid-'70s, and things are more advanced and they're doing an outer space thing, but still the whole story and premise behind it, fantastic for scary movies and creepy. And of course, you can't do a list like this without The Shining.
Yeah. And then
Jack Nicholson, all work and no play. I remember the first time I saw that, and I had no idea that's what he was typing.
Yeah. Well, Jack Nicholson,
that really creeped me out.
That's a name from the past.
I can imagine.
Wow.
Anybody discovering that at that time would be scared out of their pants and want to get the hell away from that guy.
Yeah, and where does the Exorcist come on your list?
Actually, The Exorcist didn't make the list.
Interesting. Okay. So
The Exorcist, was I'm putting, of course, this is just the ones that really got me.
I got you. Okay.
The Exorcist didn't get me.
Wow.
You know
wow.
what I mean? There were some aspects of it, but it just didn't get me.
I'm
sure there's going to be other people out there that are going to, think that I'm completely nuts.
Well, this is
because it was a huge blockbuster. Back in the mid-'70s when that movie came out. I mean, it was hugely successful.
Well, this is a Gar Boras' time machine we're going back in, so, it's your story.
Yeah, it's just, this is just me.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own taste. And who am I to tell somebody else that they should feel the same way as I do? There's another one that's lost in the shuffle that nobody's ever, I don't even know if you'd be able to find it.
Uh-huh.
But it was the premise of the story was absolutely fantastic. And it came out back in the 1980s. It's called The Hidden.
Oh, I've never even heard. Wow.
If anybody can find that movie for campy horror, absolutely. It's really good and it's a really good story. This one got me because my parents went to the drive-in.
Oh, okay.
And it came out back in the mid-'70s, and we watched this, and I was a kid. And it was a Vincent Price one called The Oblong Box.
Oh, okay.
And that's another campy horror for anybody that likes to turn out the lights and watch something old, and but it's really really good. The premise of the story, I loved it, and as a kid you're watching it. That one, it's worth a watch for the campy horror person. Another one from the late 90s, Fallen.
Oh, okay.
I forgot who the main actor, a black guy that is considered just like his work. Just stands on its own. He's a really, really good actor.
Okay.
Denzel Washington.
There you go.
He's the main character in that movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just a great actor, but the whole idea behind the story and everything, oh my gosh, really creepy. It's not a waste of time. Fallen, absolutely. Another one that really got me. Back when I was a kid, my sister and I really got me. The Birds.
Oh yes,
Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
My God, that to this day, that is a really creepy story.
And you know why that is because when you think that a guy could scare the hell out of you with just a bunch of birds on the screen, I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, three movies made it to this from Alfred Hitchcock.
Wow.
The next one, Rear Window.
Oh, okay.
That's also an Alfred Hitchcock one starring Jimmy Stewart.
Wow.
And, that's a really good story. That's creepy.
Creepy, wow.
And of course, Psycho.
Psycho, yeah.
How can you not put Psycho? To this day, that still stands as a really, really creepy, great storyline. The whole idea about his mom and everything.
And so much so, Gar, that I got to just throw this in there while you're bringing Psycho up, is two things with that. I mean, a lot of people point to that shower scene and just how spooky it was, and then also, I mean, just Psycho in general has so much influence on pop culture as far as, even to this day, all these years later, when you go to Universal Studios like we're talking about on the tram ride, that's one of the features you get to see is this guy pretending to be Norman Bates at the Bates Motel, and he's got a knife, and people kind of get freaked out, even though you're expecting to see it every time, but they're still doing that there,
Well, that shower scene is an iconic scene in the history
of cinema,
of scary movies, and the female character that got that was in that shower scene, was Jamie Lee Curtis's mom.
Wow, yeah.
Back in the day, when that movie came out, she was a big named actress.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And very, very famous actress. And Jamie Lee Curtis's mom was like stunningly beautiful.
Oh wow, yeah.
I mean, absolutely stunningly beautiful. But yeah, she is the woman in that shower scene. I don't want to give it away for anybody.
But I mean, anybody knows what I'm talking about has seen it. Yeah, that's pretty iconic. That's when they refer to Psycho, that's one of the first things people bring up.
Absolutely, but there's so much more to Psycho than just that.
Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah,
there's then how can you not do this without They Live?
Okay.
If you've never seen it, it's a really, really good story. I wouldn't say that it's super scary, but it definitely is creepy. And it definitely goes under the heading of horror movies. It's but then here's another one that, oh my gosh, it's very, very creepy. Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Wow.
Now there's two of them. There's the original one that's black and white. Really, really good for a campy black and white.
Yeah.
But also the one that was done later, starring Kiefer Sutherland's father, who was a famous actor before Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, wow.
Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, I remember him, yeah.
Yes, he was a very well-known, very famous, in a lot of famous movies.
Oh, yeah.
But in that version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, starring Donald Sutherland, phenomenal. Definitely not a waste of time.
Wow.
And then, of course, Seven.
Okay, yeah, Brad Pitt, yeah.
That movie, that ending scene got me.
Wow.
That ending scene, because when I had seen the movie, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And, when that culminated, that ending scene really got me. Wow. And then last as just honorable mention, Arachnophobia.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember actually going to a theater with my grandmother to see that, and she was so freaked out like by all the snakes and all that.
Well, not snakes.
Yeah.
But if you've got a phobia of bugs.
Yeah. But it's
that movie will get you because there's a lot of people out there that have a phobia about bugs.
Yeah, and once again, Gar, you've been the perfect guy to talk to you about all this stuff, and I think what's interesting is just a wide range of reference points you have with all these different movies from different eras, and I want to wrap it up with this today, which is it's kind of interesting going back to Dracula, since that was kind of the topic for today. 1931, 90 years ago, the film came out. What's kind of interesting is when the film was originally released, they released it in, I believe it was February, which oddly enough, we're doing this in the month of February. It's going to get posted in March. But my point being, if a film like this was come out today, they would probably release it around Halloween time, because that's when they release a lot of horror. And it's kind of interesting that I think back in 1931, they'd have no idea that all these horror movies and everything like that would be associated with Halloween. It's kind of like that's exactly what people do on Halloween. They, besides typical trick-or-treating, a lot of people that don't go do that, they go to parties, they watch horror flicks, like you were saying. I mean, it's become a thing, really, these days. It's so associated with Halloween.
Well, okay, can I throw because I was a kid back in the 60s when you could go out for Halloween and go from house to house and do that whole thing, and we didn't have our parents with us, and it wasn't what it is today. I mean, it's
razor blades.
People are too scared to allow their kids to do that kind of stuff. If you're living in metropolitan areas, I'm sure small town areas are much safer, just like it, very close to what it was like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But what Halloween used to be is completely lost nowadays.
Oh yeah.
But every Halloween back in the 60s when I was a kid, they used to show on TV, and this was kind of our warm up as kids, to going out to, just before we would go out trick-or-treating, we used to watch a movie called Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah, I got that somewhere. That's maybe we do an episode on that, but great film.
That movie was the best tune-up for a kid to go out for Halloween trick-or-treating, because it was campy horror. It was a comedy.
That's what I think made it so
scary.
Great. Yeah.
You could go out. It wasn't scary, but it had all of the iconic scary movie characters of that time period. It had Frankenstein, had Bela Lugosi as Dracula. Yeah. It had, it just had it was a parade of all of those iconic
figures,
scary movies of that time period.
And then you have the comedic genius of Abbott and Costello, which just made it what it was. Well, Gar, I think we were onto something here. This came out really even better than I knew it was going to be special, but I really dug doing this day. I don't know about you.
Well, I totally enjoyed it. That's why when you brought it up and when we were first talking about it, and we were kind of trying to search for where to go with it. Yeah. And that's when I said to you, well, as a kid, I loved watching scary movies.
Yeah.
And that's where this whole idea was kind of born from.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, everybody knows me as the singer for the Guns N' Roses tribute band and everything like that. But for people that I love going down memory lane.
Yeah, because
what I really love doing is when we were talking about music, I loved going down memory lane because I was going to all of these clubs and seeing all of these bands when they were infancy, and being in LA when Van Halen was playing before they came out with their iconic first album.
Yeah. And while you and I could
all of the other bands,
and while you and I could talk all day about that, and and about the Guns N' Roses thing, and that it shows that there's so much more to talk about. There's so much more to what you're into, and that's why I knew you'd be the perfect guy to do this with, because like I said, it's just been so much fun. So thanks for doing this, Gar, and we'll be doing it again real soon. If you could hold on for just.